problem I find, living a life that I can't leave behind. There's no sense in telling me the wisdom of a fool won't set you free. That's the way that it goes, it's what nobody knows, while every day my confusion grows. Every time I see you falling, I get down on my knees and pray. I'm waiting for that final moment to say the words that I can't say. I don't think you're what you seem. I admit to myself, if I hurt someone else, I'll never see just what we're meant to be. Every time I see you falling, I get down on my knees and pray. I'm waiting for that final moment to say the words that I can't say. Every time I see
See if I can turn this down. There it is. Really like to throw off the groove there and just stop the music. That's sweet. Hello, family. Thank you for tuning in. Love you all. The bad news about the TikTok account being down is that I can't do debate troll for hours and hours and hours. The good news is I can put hours and hours and hours into this show, which hopefully for you, my more invested viewers and friends, is probably hopefully more value in it. It's good to interact and debate with people, but I made a connection doing this research, because I've just been kind of inundated with this research that I don't know if anybody's ever covered. And I thought about not even doing anything like a live about this and just trying to make a 10 or 12 or 14 minute piece that we could get out to the whole world, because this one's big. It's about propaganda. That's what the show is about tonight. And I made a connection between Bernays, Aldous Huxley, the social engineers, and how the theory of evolution has been adopted in our history and our reality as scientific fact. That's just crazy. So if you're like kind of a nerd, looking at you, my fellow nerds, that's into nerdy conspiracy history and apologetics, if you're an apologetic conspiracy nerd, this is the show for you. I'm also going to try to execute the most scholarly, well-researched, multiple discipline, crazy nature of reality, academic style piece, lecture, ever done by a guy wearing a t-shirt over a long sleeve shirt. Like I'm the lead singer of Blink-182 or a former snowboarder, whatever. So, I mean, that's a distinction I don't think anybody's ever made, right? This is going to be the most scholarly thing ever done by a former pop punk band man. All right. So, okay, here's the outline. Everybody knows about propaganda. And most people know, especially people that watch this show, about social engineering. You probably know the name Edward Bernays. You probably know the name Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. That's that book. VORs, Bible codes, and Brave New World. And I'm somewhere right in the middle. It's just where my headspace is. We're going to look at how effective Edward Bernays is. We're going to do about 15 minutes on Edward Bernays and just how far ahead of us intellectually he is, and how this group used guys like him to engineer this reality. And then we're going to look at Aldous Huxley. Huxley, when he wrote Brave New World, the first time I saw, I'll be honest with you, I saw the movie, because I'm not a huge reader. It was probably 96, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's our whole reality. How did this happen? Oh, he wrote it in 1925 or 35, whatever. How could a guy be 90 years ahead of his time, as it is today's date? And I found out that he, was in on the group. Him and Margaret Sanger, and there's all these connections and stuff. Well, the connection to him and how Darwin's theory got pushed and has been accepted is like conspiracy gold. It's crazy. And I plan to do a few shows or pieces of content on it. So that's the outline. We're going to look at Bernays. We're going to look at Huxley. And then I'm going to have like an M. Night Shyamalan twist reveal at the end of this. So I'm not very good at like TV, but stay tuned to the end for the conclusion, for the compelling conclusion. Hopefully I can get it done tonight. Probably about an hour and 20 minutes. So, okay. Dan, you have to stay here for this. I talked to you about it on the phone a little bit. It's crazy. You don't have to stay for the whole thing. You can watch it on YouTube. That's what's great. You can watch it later when you're ready. So, Edward Bernays. You've all heard that name. Many of you know what he's accomplished. I knew a lot of what he had accomplished, but not all of it. The thing that we're going to watch about a 10-minute piece really showing what this guy's done. But we're going to preface it with a very famous quote of his from the book Propaganda. And you can see it's old, because look at how old that picture is. It's like 19-aught something. I don't know. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. And we're going to hit on that later. What democratic is. This is important. People need to see this. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. Dot, 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 dot. I think that's Morse code. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Quickly, governed by men we have never heard of. People want to say Freemasons, Jesuits, Jews. They want to just pin it on somebody, left, right, whatever. Spoiler, it's men you've probably never heard of. Like Edward Bernays, who you may have not heard of before tonight. Maybe you have. Let's see here. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind. This, spoiler, Trudeau ends up in this. If you're not a conspiracy theorist a little bit, if you don't question a little bit what's going on, I would just say that the social engineers have very well accomplished their goal of getting you to accept your slavery, your servitude, without the ability to even see the unhidden hand. The hidden hand. It's not an unhidden hand. Oh, maybe I'm going to unhide it tonight. Okay. This is a 9-minute piece that it's animated. So right there, it's like, if you know, I'm interested. It's like The Simpsons tell you the history of the world. This piece on Bernays, a couple things I knew about the Torches of Freedom, the war he had started. I knew something about it, but this is unbelievable. So enjoy. I'm going to stop after a couple points just to really drive home what we're looking at here. But this is important to set up where we're going. So
Edward Bernays persuaded women to smoke. He convinced the public that bacon and eggs were the true all-American breakfast. He also facilitated the successful overthrow of a democratically elected Guatemalan president. How did one man achieve these remarkable accomplishments? The methods he used to achieve these astonishing events are explained in his book, Propaganda. What is propaganda? Propaganda nowadays is seen as a synonym for lies. It implies half-truths, selective history, bias, misleading information and other tricks. However, it can be used in a positive manner. For example, a campaign to improve public health through vaccination. When used in such a constructive way, it can be a progressive force, capable of improving and benefiting every life and every home.
I guess just to show you that this isn't some conspiracy guy. It's an interesting thing he threw out there. Oh, good propaganda. Saving the world through medicine. Interesting. Continue.
Specific propaganda should be seen as good or bad depending on the merit of the cause urged and the correctness of the information published.
Let me just stop. Do you think that's true? Do you think there's such a thing as good propaganda? Do you think it's a good thing to sway people to do the thing that they didn't intuitively want to do? I disagree. There's good propaganda. As long as it's for, forced inoculations, it's really good. It's great propaganda. I would just prefer for the information. Just give me the info. Let me make a decision, right? No such thing as good propaganda. IMO.
Modern propaganda is a consistent and continuing effort to create or shape events to influence public relations on an enterprise, idea or group. Edward Bernays worked for the Woodrow Wilson administration in the First World War, using a propaganda model promoting America's war efforts as bringing democracy to Europe. After swaying the public across the world with this slogan, he set to work on employing propaganda in peacetime. Due to negative implications surrounding the word propaganda because of its use by the Germans in the war, he promoted the term public relations.
Okay. Rich nailed it. I'm going to be talking through the whole thing, so it's not going to be 9 minutes. Anybody ever look into why America got into the World War I conflict? I don't have time to get into it tonight, but let's say Woodrow Wilson is a scumbag, and he put us in the Federal Reserve Act, and he wanted the Lusitania to go down to get us in the war. Definitely a possible false flagger on that one. And Bernays telling the world we needed to get in there. I have a great uncle who was severely traumatized in World War I, and a lot of people suffered similar things, and a lot of people died. War is a rich man's game, okay? It's chess. I'll do that on another show. People go to war for rich people to make more money and to kill a bunch of innocent people. Like, that's like the whole thing. World War I, borderline total sham, really frustrating, and yeah, Bernays was behind that, so nice.
Public relations expert is concerned with bringing an idea to the awareness of the public, using modern media communications and group formations of society. They act as an advisor to their clients. Edward Bernays had an impressive list of these clients, ranging from media companies such as Time Inc., CBS and NBC, through to individuals such as the President of the United States.
That's funny, right? Time Inc. and CBS, I've showed you guys that. They're both the logo of the Eye of Horus. That's fun.
He was not just a propagandist. He was concerned with courses of action, policies, systems and opinions, and the securing of public support for them. His responsibilities even included discovering new markets. The most famous new market Bernays was asked to uncover was that of women smoking cigarettes in the late 1920s. Up until then, women smoking in public was seen as a social taboo.
Do you guys know this history with the Bernays getting women to smoke campaign? If you're not familiar with this this information, but a lot of you probably do know about it, but watch how he pushes this and got half of the population to think smoking was cool.
Bernays sets about removing this taboo to potentially double tobacco companies' possible clientele. First, he contacted a psychoanalyst to understand the societal perceptions that dissuaded women from smoking. He found that for feminists, cigarettes were like torches of freedom that symbolised their non-conformity and freedom from male oppression. He used this information to formulate a strategy and got a group of stylish women to march in an Easter Day parade.
Alright, time out. Many of you know about the whole Easter debacle and Mother's Day debacle. Don't touch those, apparently. Okay. Torches of Freedom. Statue of Liberty. That's fun. Independence. Independence Day. I'm going to do a show on Independence Day. It has to do with independence, basically, from God. I know that there's an American thing in there, and I get it. Boston Tea Party, whatever. American Revolutionary War, all that stuff. But the esoteric side. So, of course, the women smoking represented women's lib, women's empowerment. And it represented torches of freedom, which torches light Illuminati, Enlightened One, Lucifer, Prometheus, and the Statue of Liberty. And, of course, they did this on Easter, right? The sex goddess fertility holiday. So you just watch this stuff. It's like it just writes itself. Like you're just watching this going... Of course, yeah. What else can you add to this, anyways?
Prior to the parade, he had told the press that a group of women's rights marchers would light torches of freedom. On his cue, the women lit up their cigarettes in front of the eager photographers. The result was press coverage in several major newspapers, including the New York Times, which helped to break the taboo against women smoking in public. The study of mass psychology has brought to light the fact that a group can have certain mental characteristics distinct from that of an individual. Learning how the masses are influenced by various factors allows us to affect change in public opinion with a fair amount of accuracy. However, propaganda will never be an exact science, in the same way psychology or sociology isn't, because they deal with humans. If you can influence leaders, you automatically influence the groups they rule or have authority over. The group mind has impulses, emotions and habits rather than thoughts as such. It makes up its mind by impulsively following the example of a trusted leader or authority figure. If this is not available, the herd thinks by clichés or images that stand for a group of experiences or ideas. An old propagandist would treat the human mind as an individual machine and rely on certain stimulus, often repeated, creating a habit. Similarly, they would reiterate an idea to create conviction with individuals. For example, to advertise bacon and eggs, adverts would contain phrases along the lines of "Eat more eggs," "Bacon is good for you," and "Bacon and eggs are cheap and healthy." A new propagandist such as Bernays, who understands group psychology, would first look at who influences eating habits. The answer is doctors and physicians. They would then suggest to these doctors and physicians to publicly state that eating bacon and eggs is good for you. The propagandist knows that a large number of people will follow the advice of their doctor due to the psychological relationship between a person and their doctor.
Hey, we want people to smoke, so we'll just suggest to the doctors to say it's good for you. 9 out of 10 doctors say it's good for you. We want to sell more bacon. Ed Bernays, Mr. Bernays, how do we do it? Well, just go tell the doctors that, just tell the patients that it's good for them. Eat bacon. It's good for you. And because of the just psychological relationship that we have with our doctor, which another word for that is trust, everybody will eat bacon. So that's fun. In Bernays' perfect world, we're eating bacon, smoking cigs.
A doctor signifies health, which in turn signifies long life. Bernays used these exact methods of leader influence to convince the public that bacon and eggs were the true all-American breakfast. Bernays sold more bacon, not by telling Americans that bacon is tasty, but by asking doctors the question, is it more healthy to eat a hearty breakfast or a skimpy breakfast? His advertisements then said, 9 out of 10 doctors recommend a hearty breakfast like this one, with a photo of bacon and eggs.
I'm going to fast forward in the effort of time here.
An old ad
talks about
to the
selling
purchaser,
pianos.
Please buy a piano.
Here we
These
go.
methods and techniques were used for Bernays' most extreme propaganda campaign, the overthrow of the Guatemalan government. The government had introduced labour laws that allowed workers to strike if their demand for higher wages were not met. The United Fruit Company had been the largest landowner and employer in Guatemala for several years, and these laws would affect their profits. Edward Bernays was hired by the United Fruit Company to persuade Americans that the then Guatemalan president, Jacobo Arbenz, was a communist, when in reality he was a liberal capitalist. Bernays ran an intensive campaign of misinformation to portray the company as the victim of the government for several years, including taking American journalists to Guatemala and arranging for them to interview only those who opposed Arbenz. Bernays' involvement led to US President Eisenhower to intervene, and ultimately Arbenz was overthrown in a US-sponsored coup designed to make the world safe for large US corporations.
So obviously we need a drinking game at home where, when I pause the video, you drink something because make it a lot of fun. So did you see that? This is why I keep pausing this. Bernays, the United Fruit Company was losing, they weren't making as much profit. And so they hired Bernays, and Bernays got the media to come out and make the then leader, who was liberal progressive, or just at least liberal, whatever, make him seem like a communist. Not true at all, totally misinformation, reverse information. And in doing this, by having the media come and interview some people and totally misrepresenting it, they use the American media to basically justify this war. And then the president of the United States sent the military industrial complex to overthrow him so that the United Fruit Company could make more profits. That's legit. And nothing wrong with that. Hey, let's use the media and the military industrial complex to make the king and the queen more money, because we're on a chessboard. I'm gonna get into the chessboard thing later, but king and queen. Next to them are the bishops, and bishops are interchangeable with scientists. It's just the person giving you the information. Then the knights are the information coming and going, so that's the media and the Central Intelligence Agency. The rooks are the military-industrial complex, and we're the pawns. We're set up left against right, white against black. You know, it's just it's the way that they do it. It's the way the elites win at this game. And Bernays, it just go. Yep, we're just gonna throw. We can't gotta have the fruit people make more money. We can overthrow them with media, misinformation, and send the military-industrial complex. It's great. So part of this that frustrates me is that is misinformation. We're called misinformation. You know, VOR is mal, dis, and misinformation. That's what we are, because we're trying to expose the truth. That's actual misinformation. And they censor us, and then that happens. And that is happening right now. Absolutely right now. World Economic Forum. I can't go down the list. I got to try and be safe, but we could go down the list of the last 2 years, and that explains exactly what is happening right now. All right, cool. That's good stuff. So, yeah, Bernays sucks and is very good at what he does. And he's just one in a string of such social engineers, propagandists. So we're going to go now to Huxley. We're actually moving along at a pretty good clip here. And Huxley, if you've read Brave New World, so backwards for me, it's crazy prophetic. How did he get this right? Again, I said it at the intro. It's because he's tied in. It's because his family, his history. He's not just a guy that conked his head and had a prophetic dream and wrote this book. He's got the blueprint, and I've known this for years, like 20 years. I've known this, but today, like, vetted it in like a really crazy, affirming way. So we're gonna do. This is a 20-minute video. I'm gonna skip a section. We're gonna break it into little bits, little parcels, and I've got some clips to attach to them, but. This is Mike Wallace, who maybe recently passed. I know he was a journalist up until in the last 15, 20 years. They're just smoking cigs, talking. It's funny. That's how they used to do it. But this is one of the most... I encourage you guys to do this. I'll share it on Discord. I encourage you guys to watch this whole thing. There's nothing new under the sun, okay? The human condition is very predictable. The devil knows what man is going to do. The devil knows how to manipulate the situation. These people work for the devil. It's really simple. And as fancy as we think we are, and much as we're evolving and getting new technology and extending our life and all these things that aren't necessarily happening, we're the same exact human as our ancestors, and we are in the same condition anyways. We might be a worse version of them, which means we're just even easier to control. So yeah, watch this and you're going to be like, wow, this is the last 2 years. This is everything I've ever seen. So here we go. I guess I better share it. If not, it's just going to be you watching me watching it, and that's not going to be great. I'll be like, pausing it. Here we go. I think it's going to start off kind of loud. And I want you to appreciate the dialogue between these two. It's really high level communication. This is what we used to have before emojis.
Good evening, I'm Mike Wallace. Tonight's guest, Aldous Huxley, is a man of letters, as disturbing as he is distinguished. Born in England, now a resident of California, Mr. Huxley has written some of the most electric novels and social criticism of this century. He's just finished a series of essays called Enemies of Freedom, in which he outlines and defines some of the threats to our freedom in the United States. And Mr. Huxley, right off the bat, let me ask you this. As you see it, who and what are the enemies of freedom here in the United States?
Well, I don't think you can say who in the United States. I don't think there are any sinister persons deliberately trying to rob people of their freedom. But I do think, first of all, that there are a number of impersonal forces which are pushing in the direction of less and less freedom. And I also think that there are a number of technological devices which anybody who wishes to use can use to accelerate this process of going away from freedom, of imposing control.
Well, what are these?
Okay. So you're going to see the same kind of can-kicking tactics here. It's coming. This is why. It's coming. This is why. Does anybody want... So first off, he didn't say that it was anybody in particular that was doing it. So I don't think it's a group. I don't think it's a group like my family. It's definitely not us. It's just these things. It's these amorphous, interpretable mediums, which some people could take advantage of, but like really nobody's to blame. It's just the technology is dangerous and we need to be careful. Does anybody want to guess? I hope somebody gets this. What one of his concerns for why we would lose our freedom, one of his concerns about what is happening that is going to cause, the destruction of man, or, this kind of dystopic scenario. I'll let you guys make a guess while I hit play, because he doesn't get to it for about 30 seconds.
Forces and these devices, Mr. Huxley.
I should say that there are two main impersonal forces. The first of them is not exceedingly important in the United States at the present time, though very important in other countries. This is the force which in general terms can be called overpopulation, the mounting pressure of population pressing upon existing resources. This, of course, is an extraordinary thing. Something is happening which is...
Overpopulation. So I'm older, and when I was a kid, the ozone was the problem. The ozone had a hole in it. Couldn't use hairspray. I never listened. I'm just kidding. I don't use hairspray. We had to save the planet because of the ozone. In this year, I'd just make a guess, 50, 40, 55, 50-ish, I don't know. I need to look into that. It's overpopulation. It's the problem. It's nobody. It's not a thing. It's not a person. It's not a controlling group. It's overpopulation. Too many people. Do you see that coming?
Which has never happened in the world's history before. I mean, let's just take a simple fact that between the time of the birth of Christ and the landing of the Mayflower, the population of the Earth doubled. It rose from 250 million to probably 500 million. Today, the population of the Earth is rising at such a rate that it will double in half a century.
Well, why should overpopulation work to diminish our freedoms?
Well, in a number of ways. I mean, the experts in the field, like Harrison Brown, for example, pointed out that in the underdeveloped countries, actually the standard of living is at present falling, that people have less to eat and less goods per capita than they had 50 years ago. And as the position of these countries, the economic position, becomes more and more precarious, obviously the central government has to take over more and more responsibility for keeping the ship of state on an even keel. And then, of course, you're likely to get social unrest under such conditions, with again an intervention of the central government. So I think...
Okay. So let me break this down really quick. Overpopulation is causing the need for central government. You need central government, and this is going to be one of the themes tonight because of overpopulation. But don't worry, the central, federal, world, secular order is going to save you. Did you see that little thing about how it went from 250 million to 500 million in 1900, 1600 years, 1700 years, whatever? And then it doubled? Isn't that weird? How could it go from, like, man's been on the earth for, I don't know, a couple 100,000 years. How does it go from, when Jesus was alive, it was only 250,000 people? And then it went to 500,000? And now it's at 8 billion? I wonder what would happen if you went backwards and you took the same population growth trajectory, which has been steady, 1.6% or whatever, and you just go back, you backdate that, how far back it goes. Anybody want to make a guess? Just in the recorded actual history of mankind, if you take the rate at which we know populations grow and you reverse that back, how long ago do you think we had, say, 8 people? 4,000 years. Dan got it. Thank you, Dan. 4,000 years. So either you believe that major catastrophes and wars and famines and all the and they bake that into the number, by the way, but either you believe that major things have happened that have wiped out the earth recently, or you just whatever, you just choose to believe whatever you want to believe. But that's just an interesting side note. Anyways, yeah, so basically, really simply, the overpopulation problem, which isn't going to be a problem now, but it's going to be a problem later, is going to be solved by the central government. Okay, so that's an easy one. We're going to scroll up to 9 minutes and 50 seconds. This is where it gets good, and I mean good. This thing should, we should be tipping up over and heading down the backside of this roller coaster ride here. So buckle up.
Us toward a real-life, brave new world, and you say that it's awaiting us just around the corner. First of all, can you detail for us what life in this brave new world which you fear so much, or what life might be like?
Well, to start with, I think this kind of the dictatorship of the future, I think will be very unlike the dictatorships which we've been familiar with in the immediate past. I mean, take another book prophesying the future, which was a very remarkable book, George Orwell's 1984. Well, this book was written at the height of the Stalinist regime and just after the Hitler regime. And there he foresaw a dictatorship using entirely the methods of terror, the methods of physical violence. Now, I think what is going to happen in the future is the dictators will find, as the old saying goes, that you can do everything with bayonets except sit on them. That if you want to preserve your power indefinitely, you have to get the consent of the ruled. And this they will do partly by drugs, as I foresaw in Brave New World, partly by these new techniques of propaganda. They will do it by bypassing the sort of rational side of man and appealing to his subconscious and his deeper emotions and his physiology even, and so making him actually love his slavery. I mean, I think this is the danger, that actually people may be in some ways happy under the new regime, but they will be happy in a situation where they oughtn't to be happy.
But let me ask you this. You're talking about a world that could...
Hopefully you got that. I don't know how well his accent and kind of older English is coming through here. It's an old video, obviously, but this idea of the dystopia of the future won't be done by force. It will be done by consent. It's the white glove approach that I've been talking about. It's consensual slavery, and he's talking about this. Servitude. I don't mean to use the word slavery. Well, I mean like serving the system, serfdom. That's what I mean by that. And I've said before on the live show, it doesn't surprise me that they're pulling it off. It surprises me that the people are celebrating their captivity. That's a new thing in humanity. Because for a long time, as long as we've been around, a controlling psychopath has taken over and made life totally intolerable for the serfs, for the peasants, while they get everything. They're on the top of their castle eating the meat and being filled and have, with all, like, gaining weight and, like, servants and all of this thing and all of this, pageantry, while the serfs live in squalor with dirty drinking water, and they, the thug, the jackboot, enforcers come and take all their things for taxes, whatever. People get pissed and they revolt. Well, that system sucks for these guys because they got to rebuild, and it's like ugly. They came up with this white glove social engineering approach, which has been unbelievably effective. It's just unbelievably effective. And he's talking about this. And how do they do it? Because they prey on your subconscious mind, on your physiology. He knew this then. Black and white television, whatever that is. 46, I don't know what year. He was talking about World War II, maybe 52. He was talking about this 70 years ago. We're going to affect their physiology. We're going to use deep psychological war games, and we're going to socially engineer this, and it's going to happen, and people are going to like it. And even Huxley goes, they should be kicking back, and they're not. That's going to be crazy. They're going to totally forfeit their human intuition in favor of this system that they get that is downloaded and programmed into their construct.
Take place within the confines of a totalitarian state. Let's become more immediate, more urgent about it. We believe, anyway, that we live in democracy here in the United States. Do you believe that this brave new world that you talk about could, let's say, in the next quarter century, the next century, could come here to our shores?
I think it could. I mean, that's why I feel it's so extremely important here and now to start thinking about these problems, not to let ourselves be taken by surprise by the new advances in technology. I mean, for example, in regard to the use of the drugs, we know there's enough evidence now for us to be able, on the basis of this evidence and using a certain amount of creative imagination, to foresee the kind of uses which could be made by people of bad will with these things, and to attempt to forestall this. And in the same way, I think with these other methods of propaganda, we can foresee and we can do a good deal to forestall. I mean, after all, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance.
You write in Enemies of Freedom, you write specifically about the United States. You say this, writing about American political campaigns. You say, all that is needed is money and a candidate who can be coached to look sincere.
This is so important.
Political principles and plans for specific action have come to lose most of their importance. The personality of the candidate, the way he is projected by the advertising experts, are the things that really matter.
Well, this is, during the last campaign, there was a great deal of this kind of statement by the advertising managers of the campaign parties, this idea that the candidates had to be merchandised as though they were soap or toothpaste, and that you had to depend entirely on the personality. I mean, the personality is important, but there are certainly people with an extremely amiable personality, particularly on TV, who might not necessarily be very good in positions of political trust.
Well, do you feel that men like Eisenhower, Stevenson, Nixon, with knowledge of forethought, were trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the American public?
No, but they were being advised by powerful advertising agencies who were making campaigns of a quite different kind from what had been made before. And I think we shall see probably all kinds of new devices coming into the picture. I mean, for example, this thing which got a good deal of publicity last autumn, subliminal projection. I mean, as it stands, this thing, I think, is of no menace to us at the moment. But I was talking the other day to one of the people who has done most experimental work in the psychological laboratory with this, who was saying precisely this, that it is not at the moment a danger, but once you've established a principle that something works, you can be absolutely sure that the technology of it is going to improve steadily. And I mean, his view of the subject was that, well, maybe they will use it to some extent in the 1960 campaign, but they will probably use it a good deal and much more effectively in the 1964 campaign, because this is the kind of rate at which technology advances.
And we'll be persuaded to vote for a candidate that we do not know that we are being persuaded to vote for.
Exactly. I mean, this is the rather alarming feature, that you're being persuaded below the level of choice and reason.
Okay, this is great. This is, I mean, all that's gold, right? This is gold. You know why you've never seen this video? Because it shatter your paradigm, your whole this whole idea of like, we're evolving, everything's new, we're figuring this out, brave new frontiers. This is just dispels all of that. These people have been doing it for a long time. And I've talked many times on different live formats, different shows about proof of concept. They beta test something. It's a proof of concept. Huxley says, the matter is finding out that it works. And if it works, if you know that the human is going to react in the predictable way, then you know the technology will get better and you can only exacerbate this. I mean, I'm not wording it out nearly as concisely and eloquently as he did, but this is a very huge idea. We test it out, subliminal messaging, whatever it is, we know it's going to work, and then we know the technology is going to get better. And now we know we have this tool in our tool belt. Okay, all that's good. The political thing, like, dude, they're all actors, left-right paradigm. The whole thing is a ruse. I saw somebody in the chat talking about Trump or whatever, like apolitical, a-religious. That's where I'm at. You won't get me. I had a crazy, intense conversation with a TikTok creator, JTSC, on TikTok. He's awesome. You should follow him. He's going to join the Christian Content Creator Super Friends League that we're building. But he was reminding me how he didn't get into 9/11 originally because he thought that 9/11 was a Democratic ploy. And at the time, I don't know if he's more conservatively aligned or whatever. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like, I knew the Bushes were evil for a long time. So I even wanted to make a shirt that said I voted for Gore because I did at that time. Then I didn't vote for 20 years because I saw that I had been had. But, the idea that you couldn't embrace a 9/11 conspiracy because you thought it was a Democratic thing, this political game is going to be used on us. It'll never not be used on us. Trump is going to go down as some sort of Loric character. People aren't even going to know if humanity exists for 300 years. They're not going to know if he was a demigod or a real person. This orange-haired, represented Christian conservative conspiracy, all these different things that happen. He's just going to be like this mascot for why we burn witches at the stake. It's going to be crazy where that's going to go. Politics don't matter. They work for Madison Avenue, which is what they say in here. They work for the high advertising execs. It's just all a game. That whole thing, left, right, is just a game. So that wraps that up. What he gets into here is, I've been talking about this world secular democratic order. I talked about it all through the whole Canada charade campaign, the protests. I talked about it when Russia-Ukraine started. I talked about it with Yuval Noah Harari. This Ukraine, that it represents this true democratic system, which is just Soros and co. This idea is, if you can control how people think, of course you want them to vote, because they're going to vote for the thing that you want to push. And I've been talking about this for a while now. Listen to Huxley wrap this up.
In regard to advertising, which you mentioned just a little ago, in your writing, particularly in Enemies of Freedom, you attack Madison Avenue, which controls most of our television and radio advertising, newspaper advertising, and so forth. Why do you consistently attack the advertising agency?
Well, no, I think that advertisement plays a very necessary role, but the danger, it seems to me, in a democracy is this. I mean, what does a democracy depend on? A democracy depends on the individual voter making an intelligent and rational choice for what he regards as his enlightened self-interest in any given circumstance. But what these people are doing, I mean, what both for their particular purposes, for selling goods, and the dictatorial propagandists are doing, is to try to bypass the rational side of man and to appeal directly to these unconscious forces below the surface, so that you are, in a way, making nonsense of the whole democratic procedure, which is based on conscious choice on rational grounds.
I was listening to this today. I downloaded it, and we made a trip to town, and I was working listening to this, and I kept making Chloe listen to Aldous Huxley. You got to remember the name Huxley. I'm going to get into the Huxley family here in a minute. This guy, look, we're playing chess, they're playing checkers. No, I said it the wrong way. We're playing checkers, they're playing chess. We're playing 8-bit Mario, and they're playing, fully immersive VR reality. They're an entirely different lexicon of intellect than we are allowed to be in as we get forced through the public education system created to make you a good widget maker in the industrial, revolution. We needed employees, we need military, whatever. Your potential of a human, your ability to think, learn, create, build, survive is unbelievable. That stray cat that killed our chickens, he's not neutered, and he is an absolute maniac. He lives in the Maine winters. He's basically a bobcat, Maine coon at this point. He doesn't care. He eats and does whatever he wants. He hunts. He can do whatever. Humans have been domesticated, right? You were domesticated. When you went to school, when your parents, because it happened to them, when your parents dropped you off at school and said, here's my kid, have fun, do whatever you want with them. I had a good run. I got to spend a couple years with them, maybe daycare, whatever. That child came out absolutely domesticated. And your potential to affect this reality and live has been totally thwarted. While these jags, they're not jags, actually they're yahoos, huge difference, exist in an entirely different stratosphere of intellect and understanding the nature of reality and how to gain. They're not just rich because they made a deal with the devil. Yes, they made a deal with the devil. They got the inside, information. They're psychopaths, all these kind of things, yes. But they're rich because they know more than you. They're rich because they know how to make money and use money. They're rich because they know how to use language. They're rich because they network together, and they all work together for a common interest of staying in power and keeping you poor and futile and inert. These are the very minds of the people we're trying to free. In the Bible, God says, my people die for lack of knowledge. Aldous Huxley did not die for lack of knowledge. And him and his family and his brood and his ilk are why we have a general lack of knowledge. And it's infuriating.
Of course, well, maybe you have just answered this next question, because in your essay...
Okay, actually, that was a good place to stop, and I'm going to get off of this for a second because I got to show you something else. The democratic thing. Did you hear him say that the whole idea of a democracy is, with this level of propaganda, is self-defeating? Because the idea of voting for the thing you want is you think you're enlightened, you have your, you've done your research and you have your opinion, and because you've done these things, you can actually make an informed decision. No, they've preyed on your subconscious. You're below your conscious mind. They preyed on the thing that makes you think the thoughts you think. They implanted their thoughts in your head, and you think the thoughts you have are your own, and they're not. We have not a democracy. I mean, we do, but by definition. But when they can control what you think is healthy and your doctors and the information so totally that they're talking to your subconscious, you can't even talk to your subconscious. And they own your subconscious. So yeah, you're going to go vote for your thing. Congratulations. Everybody voted for Trump. Everybody voted for Biden. Who gives a shit? It's their people. It's their agenda, and it continues. So now why is the real trendy thing that we're talking about today is the democratic system? You remember the trucker protest? I pulled up a couple of these where these yahoos, over and over, I can just hear Trudeau's, partially Cuban accent going, "This is a threat to our democracy. This is a threat to our democracy." I don't know why he sounds like Richard Nixon. I'm so good at my accents. These are deeply disturbing times for the international community, world order, and for people everywhere who care about freedom and democracy. Trudeau says, "Canada is unequivocal in our condemnation of Russia's unprovoked and unjustified attack on the sovereign democratic state of the Ukraine." You understand, in this bizarre clown world we live in, that George Soros' country is the apple of the world democratic's eyes? And that Russia is the enemy? This, by the way, Russia is not a new enemy. This is old news. World War I. I wanted to cover Stalin's, where he starved everybody out 100 years ago, and how comparable it is to what's going on now. In the Encyclopedia Britannica, they're saying, well, how does this relate to today? This just happened. Russia's doing the same. Russia's the bad guy. We got to save the democracy from the bad guys, right? This is just like Bernays said. It works. We know it's going to work. The technology will get better, and we'll do it even better next time, right? Okay. Next piece. Where is this? Why am I not seeing? Okay. Convoy protests. A threat to our democracy. Well, in this case, and I covered this very detailed, their democracy was his tyrannical World Economic Forum rule. That's all it was. His democracy is his tyranny. But hey, it's your democracy too, because you voted for it. Because you're for the things he's for, right? Here's a good one. Russia's illegal. Remember illegal? These illegal blockades. He's like 4 words. Illegal, democracy. That's all he can say. Russia's illegal, and trust the science. Russia's illegal actions in Ukraine are an attack on democracy and a threat to peace around the world. Make no mistake. This is a further invasion of a sovereign state. In coordination with allies and partners, Canada is responding with the first round of economic sanctions. So, ready? They've opposed our global secular order, and so we're going to respond by starving our people. And Huxley and Bernays are laughing in their graves. Oh, by the way, it's not just them. Obviously, it's... Remember this little gem from a show that I did? I think a lot of you guys know that with my content, it's like the DNA of the 1-minute content is this kind of thing. So I've done videos on a lot of these separately. Listen to this yahoo. Remember this guy? Walter Cronkite, the voice of the eye? The guy that controlled the media through the Kennedy assassination in Vietnam and Apollo?
First, we Americans are going to have to yield up some of our sovereignty. That's going to be, to many, a bitter pill. It would take a lot of courage, a lot of faith, a lot of persuasion to them to come along with us on this necessity. Our forefathers believed that the closer the laws are to the people, the better. Cities legislate on local matters, of course. States make decisions on the matters within their borders. And the national government deals with issues that transcend the states, such as interstate commerce, foreign relations. That's what we mean by federalism. Today, we must develop federal structures on a global level. To deal with world problems, we need a system of enforceable world law, a democratic federal world government. You know,
and a lot of you know this is the same video where he said, let me see if I can find it. I didn't get this prepared. But
Council, but also ratifying these important world government, but only
here we go.
supported of willful senators, selfish political has written in a book a few years ago that we should have a world government, but only when the Messiah arrives. He wrote, literally, any attempt to achieve world order before that time must be the work of the devil. Well, join me. I'm glad to sit here at the right hand of Satan.
The path of least resistance for humankind is to follow psychopathic leaders into a highly technologically advanced one world government system that is rooted in defiance of God of the Bible. This is what happened before the flood. This is what happened in Babylon. This is what's happening now. Fine, I know I've got atheists that watch this. If you just want to believe that it's just corporate greed or whatever, you can believe whatever you want to. But the book that we follow exactly prophesied the situation. It told the history. The book was, is, and is going to happen because that's the nature of God. And the book represents him. This is the history. This is the real history of man. Okay? I know you don't want to believe in the flood. The evidence be damned. You don't want to believe that the thing that's happening was predicted and that this nefarious thing is prophesied in Scripture because you're mad at God, because you had a religious experience, or you want to do whatever you want to do. You don't do what thou wilt. You don't want to be governed, whatever. But this is going exactly to the game plan of the elites. And whether you believe that they made an actual deal with the devil, which a lot of us do, or a proverbial deal with the devil, this concessionary, psychopathic craving of power leads to the same end result every time. And Cronkite knew about it, and Huxley knew about it, and Bernays knew about it. They're getting their information from outside of time and space. Okay, so I've been talking about the world governmental order, but I've been saying the secular world order, and there's a lot of talk about this. Hand in hand with this one world system is atheism. So this research, this is the M. Night Shyamalan twist. This research that I was doing, when I came across this, it was one of those like just moments having researched this for so long. It was so validating and so enormous in my brain that I called people. I was freaking out. Aldous Huxley, as he was speaking with Mike Wallace about this, he had the information. He had the blueprint. He wasn't coming up with this out of nowhere. He was in the room. He was in rooms with people that talked about this. So I did a little bit of digging, okay? And the digging that I wanted to see is who is his family, okay? I knew, in all transparency, I knew about Julian Huxley and Margaret Sanger. I knew about that. But what I didn't know Aldous Huxley's family. Here's Julian Huxley. Okay, let's look at Julian Huxley really quick. Julian Huxley. This is Google Scholar. This article investigates the idea of cosmopolitanism associated with internationalism and the origins of UNESCO at the end of World War II. In the first few years of UNESCO's operation, delegates and functionaries portrayed world citizenship as the path to permanent world peace. And a necessary... I gotta stop. You know what? You know what I gotta say about your world peace? Stop getting us in the fucking wars that you're saving us from. Nobody I know is going to start a war with anybody. I get it. In America, we've got this divide. It sucks that we're not getting along, but nobody's going to start a war with anybody, okay? They're making the wars. World War I, totally a ruse. World War II, totally set up. World War III, it's going to be set up. They make the wars, and then they're selling us the solution as a one-world government. How about they just stop making the wars in the first place? We're making the wars. Yeah, well, you got to save us from ourselves and our crazy military-industrial complex that we all have in our backyard. Insanity. World citizenship is the path to permanent world peace and a necessary step in the evolution of human society, from tribes to nations, from national conscious to one world. A key figure in that history was Julian Huxley, UNESCO's first Director General. Okay, that's big news. This is Julian Huxley, Aldous Huxley's brother. Julian Huxley and the continuity of eugenics in 20th century Britain. He was a eugenicist, because guess what? Guess what? The real white nationalist RACISTSs that you're pissed off at are these guys. It's not your guy that lives down the street. It's Huxley and Bernays and Bush. I could go down the list. Soros. These are the bad guys. These are the bad guys. So yes, you're pissed off at a genetic level. I get it. You should be mad. But it's not your fellow serf, okay? It's not your fellow working class serf. Yes, there's bad eggs. There's bad eggs everywhere. Huxley and Darwin and all of these guys were everything that the social justice movement is actually against. And they're celebrated as heroes. Wait till you see where this goes. Okay. Life and ideas of Julian Huxley represent not only considerable contributions to evolutionary theory, but also to eugenic thought and social planning. Okay? Huxley loved Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger started Planned Parenthood. They were eugenicists all the way. And this guy, I'll see if I can get it too much. Full-scale critical biography of Huxley has eluded historians because of the sheer complexities of activities. Historian of life sciences recognized the theoretical originality of his scientific contributions and his role developing in what he called in 1942 the evolutionary synthesis. His popularizing of natural history and ornithology in a new guise of ethology showed his visionary ability to define a field of research. Okay. His central commitment to reform eugenics linked to social planning has been elucidated for the Second World War period, while Huxley's role in co-authoring the anti-weird appearance. Okay, so anyways, I can't get too far into it. That's a cat. But I need you guys to get this, okay? This man not only popularized eugenics and helped get, Margaret Sanger going. I have an article, but I couldn't pull it up because the website wanted me to subscribe to be able to pull it up. But he said that Margaret Sanger was the most important woman in a very long time because he basically is controlling. She's setting up a way to, what they do there. So, anyways, so Huxley's bad apples. Okay, but we got to go back to this. Julian Huxley, Aldous Huxley, Thomas Henry Huxley. Has anybody heard that name? Maybe Jast has. He is, when Bernays said that this society is governed and ruled by men you don't know the name of, Aldous Huxley's grandpa, Thomas Henry Huxley, is the reason the theory of evolution is taught today as fact. And if I can make this point, who made Darwin's theory happen? Thomas Henry Huxley. was one of the first adherents to Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection and did more than anyone else to advance its acceptance among scientists and the public alike. Thomas Henry Huxley. It's not going to let me do that. Too bad. All right. I guess just somewhat trust me on this. I'll go to the big. I'll just do this way. Maybe you see. It just makes me smaller. Biologist, educator, and advocate of agnosticism. Huxley's vigorous public support of Charles Darwin's evolutionary naturalism earned him the nickname Darwin's bulldog, while his organizational efforts, public lectures, and writing helped elevate the place of science in modern society. All right, I want you to think about this, okay? Do a thought experiment with me. Everybody, for the whole history of all of humanity, has believed in God or gods. Oh, everybody, always. Bug spirits and tree spirits, what are your god, whatever. Forever. And this guy, this rogue scientist, the most genius man ever, Charles Darwin, changed everybody's mind, for everybody that ever existed and lived in the entire history of the world, with his hard science. Well, guess what? He had no science. Darwin had no science. He had beaks, different size beaks, and an idea that was an ideology that went from ideology and pseudoscience to taught as fact today. And it happened because of Aldous Huxley's grandfather. I've been researching this guy. You won't believe the things that this guy... Darwin's bulldog. Charles Darwin. I said earlier, this is like, you got to be kind of a nerdy apologist and conspiracy theorist. So my nerdy apology conspiracy theorist friends are eating this up, and everybody else is like, why is he reading from the Encyclopedia Britannica? It's boring. Let's see here. About to start writing his own Origin of Species, Darwin saw Huxley's star rising. A visit to Darwin's Down house in 1856 laid the foundation for a long relationship between the two men and their families. Let's see here. She and Emma Darwin shared concerns over their husband's scientific theorizing and its theological consequences, and the Darwins stood as godparents to two of the Huxleys' 8 children. That's fun. It's fun. Charles Darwin and Huxley, meanwhile, complemented each other perfectly. The reclusive Darwin needed a public champion and defender. It's like Moses and Aaron, like anti-Moses and anti-Aaron. Huxley had initial difficulty with natural selection itself and opted for an internal source of variation that could produce new species at a stroke. Partially because there is zero evidence of this. He didn't like it because he actually had some evidence. He's like, no, there's no transitionary fossils. So I'd rather believe, because there's no God, we know there's no God, I'd rather believe that things just spontaneously change. That's like way more believable than Darwin's theory. That's what he was pushing back on when they had these discussions for a really long time. Darwin is like Moses, but for pagans, Dan says. Nonetheless, he saw Darwin's naturalistic approach as a valuable aid in his campaign to build an independent scientific elite unfettered by the constraints of the old order. This is the Encyclopedia Britannica. This isn't VOR's conspiracy apologist manual. Do you see this? He saw Darwin's naturalistic, i.e. non-miraculous campaign as a valuable aid to build an independent scientific elite unfettered by the constraints of the old order. This is a good time to switch over and show you this.
Huxley is also famous because he is considered the father of the term agnostic. Now, the word agnostic is usually used differently from atheist. An atheist is somebody who believes that God does not exist. An agnostic is not really sure or argues that essentially there's not enough evidence to know if God exists or does not exist. But that's not how Huxley actually meant it. Huxley meant the term agnostic as somebody who was actually against, from the get-go, any concept of special knowledge or revelation. In other words, the Bible is completely invalid in the beginning because it claims to be from a divine source. We're not going to consider it. That was Huxley's contribution. So science and religion were indeed in conflict, and they were entirely irreconcilable. Huxley, of course, would propound his ideas. He would say things like this. He said, definitely and precisely marked is the structure of each animal, that in the present state of our knowledge, there is not the least evidence to prove that a form in the slightest degree transitional between any of the two groups. And he mentions several, such as vertebrata, or annulosa, or mollusca, or coelenterata. He says there's nothing to suggest that there either exists or has existed during that period of the Earth's history which is recorded by geologists. In other words, he acknowledges there's really no great transitional forms that actually show how one major subkingdom of animals actually evolved into another. But he goes on. Nevertheless, you must not for a moment suppose, because no transitional forms are known, that the members of the subkingdoms are disconnected from or independent of one another. On the contrary, in their earliest condition, they are all similar. And the primordial germs of a man, a dog, a bird, a fish, a beetle, a snail, and a polyp are in no essential structural respects distinguishable. In other words, ignore the geological evidence is what he basically says, and take a look at how embryos all look alike. Now, we'll unpack this idea later and see that a lot of the evidence of embryos looking alike was based upon faked and fudged documents. But that's another story we'll talk.
That's Haeckel. Okay, so I've had so many debates with atheists and these people who just really believe they have the intellectual high ground, that they have the scientific, the weight of scientific evidence on their side. Well, let me tell you something. Your whole theory was built on a couple guys that hated the idea of God of the Bible, who finally came up with a quasi-believable ideology that had no science. No, he just admitted it. No transitional fossils. There's still an unbelievable lack of transitional fossils. There isn't any. There's some mutated things you can maybe interpret, whatever. Archaeopteryx comes to mind, I think is what it's called. There's a couple other things that's like maybe we have the information wrong, but you should have a plethora of transitional fossils. We don't have them. The embryo cell biology thing, which was basically them using magic to say that you got to believe our theory, ends up being totally wrong and forged. And then the microbiology, when we started looking into it, it shows the inverse of what they said. Very specific coding for entirely distinct entities or kinds, whatever you want to call them, species. They took this ideology that they hated God and they didn't want special creation, and they built a believable theory and totally promoted it through social engineering, Bernays thought, preying on your subconscious, preying on your the inner workings of your conscious mind, including groupthink and gaslighting and all these different kind of pressures, and you don't want to be stupid because you don't believe in science, all this kind of things. And this theory has resulted in the death of hundreds of millions of people. I don't want to ever hear again about how religion kills people, because you know who kills people? Psychopaths. That's who kills people, and they'll use any excuse they can. And trust me, they rode that religion train right up to the top until people rebelled, and they rode it right down the bottom. They're going to control it in both ways. If you want to really be a good investor, buy the thing coming up, buy it coming down. That's what these people do. And they've been doing it for a long time, and they're going to keep doing it, whatever. Okay, so back to this guy, this Yehu. A couple other pieces of information that I came across with it that just still, it's crazy. It's crazy. Let's read this again. He saw Darwin's naturalistic, i.e. non-miraculous approach as a valuable aid in his campaign to build an independent scientific elite unfettered by the constraints of the old order. By the way, everybody's got to love C.S. Lewis, but if he's not your favorite author, he should be. He really talked about this scientific technocracy and how afraid he was of its takeover in his last few books. Therefore, rather than shy away from the controversial aspects of evolutionary theory, Huxley played them up using Darwin's Origin of Species as a Whitworth gun in the armory of liberalism. Let me just say that again for my liberal atheist friends. Using Darwin's Origin of Species as a Whitworth gun in the armory of liberalism. Because you need that. You need, in order to have true progressive liberalism, it has to be secular. This is a chicken and the egg situation. And why we are constantly forced this world democratic secular order is you're not going to have one without the other. Sovereignty, and I can't get too political with it, but anyways, this is that could be a whole other show. I got to get through to like a couple other big points here and then wrap it up. Let's see here. The debate, he framed the debate over creation and evolution in black and white, either or terms, and was unforgiving of colleagues who straddled the fence, right? I'm telling you, this guy's philosophy and ideology has changed the world. Literally changes how 75% of Americans believe in evolution, something like that. The world thinks differently. The world sees the entire reality differently because of this guy. A defining moment in this professional campaign came early in exchange with conservative Bishop of Oxford Samuel Wilberforce. The British Association for the Advancement of Science meeting in 1860, Wilberforce apparently asked whether the apes were on his grandmother's or grandfather's side. Tasteless joke by Victorian standards, to which Huxley, exuding Puritan virtue, replied that he would rather have an ape as an ancestor than a wealthy bishop who prostituted his gifts. Although Darwinian propagandists, in continually recounting this episode, helped to put the men of science on an intellectual par with the powerful clergy, the reality was more complicated. So this is a crazy moment in history. I gotta stop using the word crazy, where there's a public debate, and the answer by Huxley was so thorough and dominating that the propagandists, this is the words of the Encyclopedia Britannica of Darwin's theory, said this is the moment where evolution became on level with the religious authority. Okay. Huxley carried the standard of scientific materialism and evolution on a number of battlefields. He challenged the notion of supernatural creation, informing his democratic artisans that humans had risen from animals, a lowly ancestor, bright future image that appealed to the downtrodden. Darwin's Nature was a book open for all to read. Look at this, inclusive, right? It's great. It's funny. It's fun. It's ironic. See, that appealed to the downtrodden. So they're saying that, look, hey, animals did it. You can do it too, right? It's actually, everything they say is in inverse. It's all reverse. But anyways, it's actually a part of why you accept your servitude. And it's funny. They're like, this will set you free. And see, and Darwin's Nature was a book open for all to read, right? Like a Cass Trudeau inclusion, like very liberal progressive. Like, this is a book for everyone. Although the guys that wrote it were totally rich white racists and used it to justify slavery. But other than that, it's totally for everyone, especially if you're a white European. It's really for you. He plunged headlong into the inflammatory issue of human ancestry. Darwin avoided it, but Huxley made it his specialty. He denied the human innate brains. Okay. It gets important here. There's one more piece I know I want to get to. Here we go. Political infighter, going on. He did not fight alone. With Kew Gardens, botanist John, who doesn't matter who these guys are, but the philosopher and the physicist. Oh, he had a whole group. Like, it's like Michio Kaku, Bill Nye, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Sam Harris, and other former outsiders. Huxley formed the X Club in 1864 to advanced science. Within a decade, they were parceling out Royal Society posts. Their mouthpiece was The Reader, in which Huxley, answering conservative leader Benjamin Disraeli's criticism of Darwinism, notorious claimed that science would achieve domination over the whole realm of the intellect. And Nature, founded in 1869 by Huxley's team. Okay. He said they went from like, is this theory going to work, to saying that they were going to take over the entire, let me read this again. They would achieve domination over the whole realm of the intellect. Does that sound right, theory of evolution? Does that sound right? Those of you pushers of your religion, of the theory of evolution, does this sound like the right way that you would frame this, and as you gaslight people that don't believe what you believe? that you've achieved domination over the whole realm of the intellect? So I could go on, but check this out. Nature, formed in 1869 by Huxley's team. Nature. You ever see this? Nature, the publication. Nature is a high-impact scientific journal that is widely read in the scientific community. The editorial mechanisms nature nature employs are meant to ensure the quality of the publication. Volume 1, Issue 1, November 1869. T.H. Huxley. Aldous Huxley's grandfather created Nature magazine, which today is one of the standards of natural science. Is Nature a valid source? Let's say. Source. Nature was one of the world's most cited scientific journals by the Science edition of the 2019 Journal Citation Reports, with an ascribed impact factor of 42.778. It's a high impact factor. I have no idea. Making it one of the world's most read and most prestigious academic journals. Reports of scientific research submitted to Nature undergo peer review. You ever hear this on my shows? When the geneticists and the people go, this is peer reviewed. That's not how science works. It's just peer reviewed. It's just scientists being scientists. Bullshit. It's a totally slanted ideology pushing of their religious system. As well, Nature publishes items that are not peer reviewed. For example, news pieces and letters to the editor. Nonetheless, the pieces published in Nature that don't go under peer review are subjected to editorial oversight. Our human mechanisms for ensuring the quality of items that are published are not perfect. Peer reviewers sometimes get fooled. Editors sometimes make judgments that in retrospect they should not endorse. We could go over, look at the typical non-scientist who knows about journals like Nature is in the position of being generally trusting that peer review and editorial processes do the job of ensuring the high quality of the contents of these journals. I'm going to read this again. Domination over the whole realm of the intellect. That's it. That's how it works, you guys. That's how we get from Bernays to Aldous Huxley to his grandpa Thomas Huxley. And why we believe what we believe. Why we buy what we buy. Why we smoke what we smoke. If you're a lady that smokes. Why we vote where we vote. Why we believe what we believe about our origins. Because of the domination over the whole realm of the intellect by a group of absolute aristocrat, elite, white European males who were racist, eugenicist, maniacs, but were really good at propaganda. Everything everything you were taught is wrong. Conformity is not intelligence. If you keep doing the same thing that you're doing and expect a different result, it's not going to happen. It's time to change how we think. It's time to try to save humanity from the clutches of this intellectual domination. Anyways, I guess I'll end with the show intro. I really encourage you. I tried to keep it G tonight. I think I let a S-bomb slip out at the end there, and I apologize, but I'm asking you guys to share this one. Okay, aliens or demons, we all know that. That's good. It's got a lot of traction and support and stuff. I think that was a good show. This one, make notes. Seriously, make notes. I can cite all of these sources. I can put them on the video. If you're on my Discord, I can put them there. You can email me at voiceofreasonsofficial@gmail.com. I'll send you all these articles. Do your own research. There's a trail map. Get going. Go research it. Go look at this, okay? We're being played. We've been getting played for a long time by a group of people who know what works. And we have to wake our friends and family up. This doesn't mean who you're voting for. I don't care. This is about withdrawing consent. I don't like being bullied. Love you guys. End transmission.
see just what we're meant